Are live. Hey, Alyssa, it's wonderful to have you on with us today. For those of you who do not know Alyssa Davies, she is the voice behind Mixed Up Money. And if you are on Instagram and not following her, you are missing out because her content and her graphics are like the best there are as far as money and just like life advice. So she is also the content manager for Zolo and a published author living in Calgary, Alberta. She's the founder of the two-time award-winning Canadian personal finance blog, Mixed Up Money, and she's got over 100,000 followers across social media. She's been featured in The Globe, Mail, CNBC, pretty much all over the place. If you search her, she will be there. And she just released her second book, Financial First Aid. And so we're going to be talking about that today, but we are also going to be talking about what's going on in the world. For those of you who don't know me, I am Angela Rosman, the blogger behind Tread Lightly, Retire Early, and co-founder of Women's Personal Finance, which hopefully if you're here today, you are aware of Women's Personal Finance. And I'm going to let Regina introduce herself as well.
And I am Regina Moore. I own, but don't usually blog anymore at thatfrugalpharmacist.com. And I am the other half with Angela here at Women's Personal Finance. And we are very happy to have Alyssa here today.
Yeah, and so I just want to start off with letting everyone know Alyssa actually reached out to me and asked if we should maybe bump this conversation a week or two because of everything that is going on in the world / the United States right now. If you've been living under a rock, the Roe v. Wade overturn majority opinion draft was leaked this week, and it's really horrifying. I'd say especially if you're a woman, but really if you're a human, it should be horrifying and you should care. And what I told Alyssa was that this time that we're living in with Roe v. Wade, with climate change, with war in Europe and everything else going on, talking about finances and money and being prepared for the unexpected is exactly what we need to be talking about as well. You know, when we talk about abortion, when we talk about having children, when we talk about being an adult woman in the world, having your finances together is really, really important. So talking about this conversation now makes as much sense now as any time, but in some ways even more so. And if you are financially solvent, you know, it takes money to have an abortion. It takes money to get birth control, maybe less so if you're in Canada. But in the you probably still have to pay for birth control, or is it totally free?
I still have to pay for birth control, so it totally depends on your coverage. But I want to just shout out that a lot of us in Canada, a lot of people just assume that we're doing everything right because we're not doing what the States is doing, but we still have a lot of flaws and we still don't have accessible abortions for everyone. And, you know, I've had a friend who moved to a different province and she did have to pay because she didn't have the correct healthcare coverage. So it does depend on your situation, no matter where you live.
Yep. And then even if you do have the money and you're okay on your end, the more money you have and the more space you have in your budget, the more that you can help other people too.
Which is something we have been talking about a lot in all of the places me and Angela are at in the last few days is, you know, that the being in a good spot financially is not just about you. That can be for supporting people very close to you, or if you have a lot to give, your wider networks as well. And especially with circumstances like this, where we're thinking that there's a significant possibility, accessible abortions will not be something that can be found in many states in the U.S. Having money means that you can help other people get to those things, and that's an important part of the piece that a lot of personal finance circles don't talk about is how your relative financial comfort can really help a lot of other people. It's not just about you.
Right. And we live in the Northwest. Regina and I'm in Washington, she's in Oregon. Both of our states have come out very strongly in support of legalized abortion. I don't know about your governor, but Jay Inslee yesterday held a rally and made it clear that Washington will be a sanctuary state for people coming from other places in order to get abortions. But again, you can only get to Washington if you have money, if you have time off work, if you have childcare for any other children you have, because most people who have abortions already are parents. So just because we live somewhere where at this point our access to abortion is not threatened does not mean that this is not something we have to talk about and that it doesn't impact us here.
So, Alyssa, tell us about the book, because the title is also very relevant to the conversation.
Yeah, it's mostly came to be because I have high functioning anxiety, and I hello. I love finding other people that experience the same. But I have severe difficulty thinking about the future without having immense amounts of worry and fear. And that's how I used to approach money. And I've found a way to take back whatever control I can by having those preventative measures in place that give me more financial security. And so I talk a lot about what emergency funds you should have. Yes, I have more than one emergency fund because I'm an anxious person, and how that can benefit you depending on your lifestyle. And I also do discuss all of the things that can happen to us in life, and most of the time are inevitably going to happen to us, and what to do in those instances if you're prepared or if you're not prepared at all and they totally surprise you, like unplanned pregnancy, like climate change, and the things that we can do to take action for ourselves and for other people, and how to reach out to people too. Because like you said, sometimes you don't have all of the power yourself and you need a community around you.
Ooh, I appreciate that point a lot about how to seek help and reach out. I'm not sure how much you know, Alyssa, my personal circumstances. I'm okay right now. I'll preface that, but my life was thrown into disarray when my son was diagnosed with cancer in 2018, and moved away from home for basically a year. Wasn't working. I think I'm a lot like you're describing yourself, where I have layers of protection from a ladder of catastrophe built into my life. And so we were able to weather that pretty well. But because I am typically so on top of things for myself, I don't have the systems, or at least I didn't as well then. I'm better now, of people to reach out to. Like, I've tried to protect myself so well so that I don't have to reach out to people, that if I ever do get to that point, I don't really have a great system for what to do. But better.
You mean like I tried to get you to set up a GoFundMe when Uriah was sick and you
said no?
Said no.
Yes.
Yeah. I speak about that in the book. I speak about the shame and the guilt that we feel for asking for help when it comes to using those community resources. Like, I specifically say it's okay to use programs like GoFundMe and use those resources because they exist for a reason. The system that we live in is not built for every one of us to succeed. It's not. There's so many flaws. And so you sometimes have no choice to reach out. And sometimes you don't have the privilege that others do, where they can just ask their parents for money. Like, I hate when people say that, because that's not an option for everyone. So just finding a way to
just move home.
Yeah.
Suggestion.
Just quickly change this one big part of your life. But I just feel like we all feel so much embarrassment and shame because you're not supposed to ever make mistakes or you're not supposed to ever be in this situation. You should just be able to work hard enough to cover all of those expenses. Like, that's not how life works.
And you should be able to be like an independent professional woman with like the best sex life in the world and never have an unplanned pregnancy.
Exactly. I have
to throw it in. That's going to be a theme throughout the
conversation. I'll tell you too, like, I have 2 children. My daughter was not planned, completely unexpected. I actually never thought I would have kids. But I had a choice that I was able to make, and I chose to keep my daughter. But, not everyone wants to make that same decision that I made. And I also feel like I only could make that decision because I was in a good financial place. Had it been 3 or 4 years earlier, I wouldn't have been able to continue that pregnancy. I would have had to terminate it for my own safety or security, because I wouldn't have been able to support a child at that time in my life.
Well, and I think also just knowing that you have options too makes you a better parent when you go into it knowing that it's something you've chosen to do. You know, Regina and I both have one child, and we've been very vocal about stopping at one. And, you know, I don't know what I would do if I found myself pregnant again. I have an IUD. We are very careful on that front. But, you know, just the ability to choose is so important, because I don't care what people say. Kids are extraordinarily expensive. You can say, well, you can do hand-me-downs and squish into a small house and not upgrade your car, etc. But either you're paying for childcare or you are not working. And I am sorry, having a partner not working to stay home for however many years with children is not a zero-sum game. No. It is the most expensive choice you can make. So the idea that kids don't have to be expensive is nonsense.
Even if they're not expensive, like with money, the intangibles, right? It's all the things you can't measure as well. And you know, I would be one who would lean towards the, like, maybe kids aren't as expensive because I've done it super cheap, but we have given up tons of things in our life to be able to do that and do it in a cheap monetary fashion. So we've given up a lot to be able to have a cheap kid.
Yeah.
Outside
and
of cancer.
There's a lot of people too that ask, like, should I stay home now that I've had my child? Daycare and all of that stuff is so expensive. And it's like, well, why does it have to be you too? Like, it's always the woman that feels obligated to stay home. Something we always have to, like, shield when people ask that question, like, oh, you're going back to work? Like, I went back to work super early. My husband's on parental leave now. Thankfully, that's an option here in Canada. And I still get questioned, like, why are you back to work? As if, like, that's not okay or that's not allowed. And I always tell people, like, the decision not to go back to work has massive financial implications. Like, taking myself out of the workforce for 1 year, I already did it once. And it lost me earning potential. It lost me a lot of the things and the goals that I had set forth for myself that I didn't want to give up this time. And so we made the decision that it was fair for us to split so that we both took that on as best as we could.
Little bit of damned if you do, damned if you don't then, right? Like, now you're in a place where you have the capacity and the ability to take time off, and now it's fully expected that you must, and you're questioned on why you're not, even though there's very clear reasons to make that decision. It's wonderful navigating the world sometimes.
Yeah. And Regina, your husband stayed home.
Right.
And you're the one who went to work. And
correct.
So I feel like this is the time to talk about spousal Iras. I don't know if Canada has a similar version of this, but if you are the not working spouse, so, you know, you have your IRA that has a $6,000 a year limit, which is usually you have to make at least $6,000 to put in the $6,000. But if you are the non-working spouse, you can also open an IRA in your name and max out that $6,000.
In their name, in the non-working spouse.
Right, in the non-working spouse's name. And that's really, really important. We always talk about how women need to have their own money. Everyone needs to have their own money. I don't care how many people are going to tell me that they have the perfect relationship and it would never go sideways and nothing would ever happen. But I am here to tell you, make sure you have money in your own name. Period.
Yes. We have a similar account here. It's the TFSA. They're very similar though. I talk about the 3 emergency funds that I have in my book. One of these emergency funds is my individual safety net, just for me. If anything happens in my relationship, whether it be turmoil, whether it be an unexpected death, because although we have all of the things in place that we would need, like a will and insurance and all of that stuff if someone passed away, if my husband's the primary on one of our credit cards, I can't access that card. And if I need that money, it takes a
lot of time. Like that can take a year in many cases. Probate is a giant pain. So yes, even in the most wonderful situation, you need your own funds.
Yes. And I talk too about financial abuse because suddenly during the pandemic, one of my really close friends, it came out that she was dealing with domestic violence and none of us knew. and she had to leave her romantic relationship, and we had to sit down and discuss whether or not she was financially capable of doing that. He had taken a lot of their money and put it into his accounts, and that happens a lot more than people think.
Yeah. And even, we will get people responding to us saying, well, we share everything. Everything's joint. We're in a community property state. Half of that's mine. Yeah. Well, there are also stories of a partner draining accounts before they leave, or having them locked, or, any other number of answers. And yes, you may get that money half once a divorce is final.
Yes.
But not until the divorce is final, which can take years.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a partner who is abusive or combative, that can take years. And during that time, you need to have your own funds to take care of yourself.
And I'm not sure if it's the same in the States, but here you have to be separated for 1 year before you can go through divorce.
That's some states. Mm-hmm. So like we were first married in South Carolina back in 2009. And that was one of the really sketchy things for me, is that they do have a 1 year basically cool off period. So if you're in one of those states, or if you're in Canada, like even the fastest divorce is going to take 1 year and some number of months.
And so those joint funds could be they could be used in excess while that period is happening. So even if things are good up until the point that divorce is potentially discussed, then people change when things like that happen on either side. And I'm a big advocate. We're here for women, but also saying that if you're the breadwinner as a woman in the family, I think you still have some responsibility to set up your male spouse to have the same protections that you would hope for yourself if you were the non-working or not the higher earner. Because people are people and things get messy, and
being in a same-sex relationship does not save you from any of this.
No, but that is a thing we have had, like, people push back when we talk about financial abuse, because and this is a good point to bring this up. Like, we frame a lot of conversations in and around the phrase and term, women, because that's our name, women's personal finance. But there are also non-binary members of our community. We have a lot of same-sex couples, and all of these things stand for that. As well. These are just the common ways that we can speak about things, because it's really difficult to put an asterisk at the end of every statement that we make. But these apply to any relationship.
Well, yeah, I mean, your husband is a perfect example. If he just let you do all of the money stuff and everything was in your name, he would be at risk. And it's not just about leaving, but it's also, again, kind of going back to the abortion conversation. Having a child because you have an option to do something different, staying in a relationship because you can leave, is even better.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I've had readers message me too, and they say they don't need that. They don't need the emergency fund for their relationship because they're really secure in their relationship. And I don't know where this idea that we're implying that our relationship isn't strong because we have some backup plan. I feel like if anything, that makes it more strong because you're both on the same page. I think there are situations when you don't need to tell your partner if you are in an unsafe relationship or space. But a lot of people that I've spoken to share their examples when I get that pushback saying, I've been together with my partner for 10 years and he had a mental health break. And there was nothing that could have prepared us for that happening. There was no sign that that would happen in our future. And so that's a perfect example of it has nothing to do with you and your relationship. It has everything to do with protecting your financial life and your financial future.
Yeah. And I've also heard stories of someone whose partner was in a very bad accident and ended up in a coma and was not, had no power of attorney, or they were not mentally there, and their accounts were in their name, and so they had no money because it was all frozen. So your relationship can be perfect and there are still reasons to have your own money.
Yes, and the power of attorney and all of those things are another great point. Those are things that we also don't consider. We don't want to think about those things happening because it's really depressing and it's scary. but having those things in place is going to save you in those moments.
So Alyssa, I'm sure you get into a lot of detail in the book, but like for somebody listening right now, you said there were like the 3 main components for basic emergency setup. Is that something you can discuss a little bit more? Like if somebody gets 5 minutes of information out of this to just start making some, good plans for themselves, what would those be?
Yes. I say that you need 3 emergency funds. You need one for yourself, you need one for any dependents, and then you need one for your house, your shelter, the 4 walls around you. The dependents totally depends. If you have kids, if you have pets, those are still viable options for an emergency fund. Even if you're not a homeowner and you're a renter, you may still need a backup plan if you don't have the appropriate insurance. And there are just a variety of different funds you can set up. The reason I set them up this way is because although the typical 3 to 6 months emergency fund it makes sense, the pandemic really shifted my view on that. And I also have a scarcity mindset. So I don't want to spend the money because I'm so scared I'll never have that money again. So once I compartmentalized them and labeled them and gave them a why, I now feel a lot more comfortable saving them and spending them because it gives me this feeling of knowing, well, if this happens, I still have enough saved for this because I've given specific numbers and I have specific plans.
It is shockingly difficult to spend an emergency fund. And I've actually done something similar. We have a separate vet bill fund now. And back in 2017, our old dog had a bunch of heart issues and we almost lost her. And it was like $3,500 overnight kind of thing. And we had an emergency fund, but it was so hard to take money out of it because it was just a general lump sum situation. Back last summer, our other dog ended up with a cancerous lump and she needed surgery. And I have since had a separate vet bill fund, and it was so much easier to take the money out of that account because It was specifically for that purpose. And it was like, okay, that's fine. That's what this was for. But when it's just an amorphous lump of money, I can't touch it. No, I ended up actually taking out a 0% interest credit card for the surgery back in 2017 because I literally could not touch the cash I had. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And that's when the emotions and money conversation really comes to play. It's like your mental health really dictates the way you use and save and spend your money. And so many of us don't acknowledge that either, is that we all feel differently and we all have different types of money trauma that scare us out of using things, and that's when that fear-based finance education that a lot of people use, that's when they get people, is because they know that you have those traumas and those fears.
If you could only hear some of the conversations that go on between me and Angela, like I can go from like, I am rich, I have a house paid off with my house and my retirement accounts, I'm a millionaire, to like freaking out because I am not working full time and am maybe not going to cover all of my annual living expenses. Like it just totally depends on what other stressors I have going on. And yeah, that is totally indicative of what I'm willing to tap comfortably when other things are going on. Like if I'm in that like scared hoarding mode, which was me all through my son's cancer, like I didn't spend anything really, or if I'm feeling good, and Angela has dealt with this for me because we go through these phases with my son where we're going in for his like ongoing checkups, right? And like a couple weeks before, the anxiety gets really, really high and I'm back in that like we're in treatment mode, and I get scared about everything. So like if a problem comes up, totally freaked out. I get back, we have good news, and I'm ready to spend again. I'm ready to start a house project. And my husband has said the same thing. Like I'll ask him, we need to budget because we have like a project we're going to do. And for like a month leading up to this stuff with my son, he's like, I can't even think about that. I can't think about spending money. Like it's not there. So the emotions are a huge part of it. And I like your compartmentalizing tactic. I think I will be more proactive about those types of things.
Yeah, it's changed the game for me. And it's so funny because I'm actually taking a course called Trauma of Money right now.
Oh.
And in it, I I took it thinking I was going to be taking it for my readers and so that I could facilitate conversations about money trauma. And I'm realizing how much money trauma I myself have and how that dictates my relationship with money. Even though I think I'm doing things right and I'm in a good place, there's always that fear of never having enough. Like, I can set boundaries in every area of my life, but if someone offers me money, like for a job, I cannot say no. I'm so scared to say no.
Yeah, I feel that one.
Regina and I have actually committed to each other that we are taking on no new projects in 2022.
Love it.
And I think that's helped both of us. Me more with volunteer stuff, and Regina, there are constantly things that come across your plate that would be dollars, and it's been really hard for you to say no.
Yeah.
Because they have money attached to them.
Yeah. And some of them, like, I'll take on stuff if it was in like my loose plan of how I'm going to make my money because I'm freelancing and entrepreneurial. You know, I've got all these buckets. So it's a little bit flexible, but yeah, like when something.
But then a random thing comes across your space and you're like, oh, I could do that too. That's another X dollars.
Well, it's funny you say the volunteer though too, because we talk a lot about time scarcity, and I am obsessed with time. Like, if someone is 5 minutes late, it ruins my entire day. And I did not realize that until we started talking about how time is a resource and an asset. And so it's really funny because a lot of us talk about like how we're undervaluing ourselves, like maybe with volunteering, like you're just giving away all of this time and then you're so stressed about never having enough time. So yeah, that's also an interesting avenue of like the trauma and money.
Which I'll bring up just because I know me and Angela both do various volunteer activities and point this out too. I mean, I have a nonprofit I've helped to start. Angela is involved in a bunch of stuff, and that is something that comes up a lot. Like, because of my scarcity mindset and my own money traumas, I'm still not at a point where I am comfortable giving money very much, but I am very mindful of being willing to give my time. For anybody out listening with whatever's going on, advocacy, political things and whatnot, there's a lot of people who just, we can't give. We're not there right now for whatever reason. We technically just do not have the money. We can barely cover our bills, or you just don't have it in you.
If you're not yet contributing to retirement, you should not be giving on a daily basis.
No. So, but keep in mind, you can volunteer, but be mindful of what that means. Like, your time has value. So if you don't feel that you can contribute money, maybe you can contribute your time to things. And that's what I try to do. And so I just want to tell people that I talk about how much money I do have, but I can't give it out very much. Every now and then to somebody very close to me or for something very personal, but I'm not in a space to do that. And that's okay. There are other ways you can still give back and be very valuable and help your communities and help initiatives and efforts that you care about.
I just had someone ask me if I could change one thing about our entire money system. What would it be? Such a big question. But I was like, oh, I want UBI so bad so that we can do the things that we want to do, like have a community garden or give the time that you want towards those projects that actually matter to you. So that made me think of that. But I love the idea of giving your time when you can in place of the money.
I feel like we need to have a UBI conversation at some point.
Oh my gosh, you should. I talked about it on my Instagram stories, and I debunked a lot of myths that people still believe about UBI. It's very misunderstood, and there are a lot of statistics out there that kind of push in both directions. And so finding the right information is really hard for people. So definitely.
So maybe we need to have you come back and we can talk specifically about UBI.
Yeah, I would love to talk about it. I think it's such an interesting way to kind of switch our money system around.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It opens up so many possibilities just having a small guaranteed safety net, but we can make this a bigger conversation maybe at another day.
Yeah,
Angela, want to drop a plug since we're talking about donations and volunteering for people who are listening for us. For Women's Personal Finance, if you appreciate what we do and you like the efforts that we put in, you can become a mission supporter for even just $1 a month. If that's in your capacity and you want to help us out, it's ko-fi.com/WPF. Or is it ko-fi?
It's ko-fi.com.
Yes.
Yeah. And then
someone in the comments just asked what UBI is, and it's universal basic income.
So the idea is that everyone gets a flat amount of money baseline to just cover very basic costs.
Yes.
No gatekeeping, no restrictions. Everybody gets it. It's not enough to live a comfy life, but it's enough to take away the stress of how are you going to feed yourself or your children.
Yes. Its main goal is to eliminate poverty, in a sense.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that we definitely need to have another UBI specific conversation, because I think all of us have some really strong opinions on this here. But talking of time scarcity, we are at our half-hour mark, and I just wanted to ask, is there anything else you want to let us know about your book, about your platform, about general money stuff? We will also drop a link in the comments for where you can purchase her book. It officially actually came out yesterday, so this is a really timely conversation.
Yes, I hope it's a little bit of a bright light. I really just hope that if you're feeling like you don't have that confidence to create a safety net for yourself, even if you can't do that immediately, that there are ways to protect yourself. And also, if you're already in a situation where you're struggling to get by or make ends meet, the book has tons of resources for what to do in those moments, and also how to just learn how to ask for help, because that's something so many of us struggle with. So I hope that it helps at least a few people out.
Yeah. And then I do, of course, because I am me, Regina knows what is coming, I want to give away a copy of your book for the folks on Facebook. This will also be up on YouTube later, but I want to specifically make this open to our Facebook community. So I will create, or Regina will create a Flowdesk opt-in for that.
Yeah, we'll drop that in the comments, and we'll probably, I think what we'll do is we'll send out an email with a link to this, because I think this is a really important conversation for people to have access to. And we'll also drop a link in there for you to sign up for a giveaway for the book. So watch your inboxes for those, and we'll also drop it on Facebook. If you're not already on our email list, you can do that by going to our website, womenspersonalfinance.org. It's right towards the top to join the email list, because Facebook hides a lot of stuff. It's been a little bit better the last few weeks, we will say that, but a lot of people still don't see our stuff. So please join our email list so we can share things like what other wonderful creators are doing, and keep everybody up to date and share all the good stuff and build these awesome communities of support.
And then I do also want to let folks know that this is not Alyssa's first book. She has another one out there. So if you are on Amazon or Bookshop or wherever you find your books, if you click on her name, you can also get to her 100-day money journal.
Yes, it's a journal. It's 100-day financial goal journal, just to help you save your first amount in a really accessible amount of time if you're in a time crunch. So much time scarcity today.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us. It was lovely to have you on, and we will definitely let you know at the point we are scheduling a UBI talk. Clearly, we need to have this conversation too.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Alyssa.